I've positioned the fence for where I want the cut to be. Now I can move the feather board in so that I'm getting a good flexion against the piece of wood. Tighten up the knob. Check to make sure the blade isn't going to hit the piece of wood. And if there's a problem there, I would loosen this screw and slide the jig back and forth to get it in a nice position. That surface is as smooth as I would get on the jointer, and in fact with the changing direction of grain here I would probably get a little bit of tear out on the jointer, which of course you don't get on the saw because it's cutting down this way. And this is not even a glue line rip blade, it's just a general purpose blade. For resawing on the table saw, I've got one finger raised up and the other one down low so that the piece of wood will be held vertically against the fence. Now I'll flip the piece over and cut the rest of the way through. There's the cut surface. Again, it's very smooth and I can't feel any transition between the two cuts. Except down at the end here, there's just a very small amount. That's one of the most difficult cuts. Did a great job because of the fingerboard jig. I cut this profile with the table saw, and then that fits into the miter slot and it won't lift up, but it slides nicely. Then I can glue my jig to that strip. That gives me a jig that can slide without lifting off the table saw. Then I install these threaded inserts into the bottom. So now I can slide to whatever position is needed and then lock it into that position. A T-bolt is mounted from the bottom. I chiseled out a recess for the T-bolt and then secured it in place with epoxy. Then the rest of the jig can just drop in there and lock in place. So I can adjust this way and I can adjust this way and lock with this and lock with the bolts. I glued these blocks of wood to the frame so that the hinge doesn't snap this all the way back, which would then put the finger in the wrong position to be caught by the board moving forward. These hinges have a slot in the top that you can push and turn with a screwdriver, and that adjusts the tension of the spring and therefore the force of the finger. These fingers can be set at any position you like because of the T-track, and then just tighten it up. On the contact surfaces here, I applied oil-based polyurethane and then 3 coats of paste wax so that they would be slippery. I tried ultra-high molecular weight tape, but I found it did not stand up to the abrasion of the rough wood surfaces. If your table saw miter gauge slots are not undercut, then you can use these things that come from Rockler and other people. They fit in there, you tighten it up, and then that expands a little bit and locks it in place. This table saw has a good distance from the blade to the edge of the table, so I have no problem with the 2 screws going into the T-track. But some table saws, it's a much shorter distance, and you may find that one of the screws is off the end of the table. But that doesn't seem to matter. If you tighten one of the screws, it's plenty secure. If your fence is deflecting too much when it gets pushed, you can make a block like this. And I purposely put these magnets offset so that if they happen to land over the miter slot, I could just flip it around, lock it in place, and then the fence won't deflect. So here's the deflection without the magnetic stop block, and there's the deflection with it. A conventional feather board keeps the wood against the fence by these flexibility of the wood, and that works okay, but if this edge is rough, varying in thickness or the width of the board, the regular feather board can only take up maybe 1/8 of an inch of variation at most. Whereas this spring hinge feather board can accommodate variation of at least 3/4 of an inch in the thickness of the piece of wood and maintaining a constant pressure. Another problem is if I'm doing a cut like this, the edge of the piece of the wood gets too close to the miter slot, and so the feather board, you can't adjust it in there properly.